Hello! In today's video, we'll be discussing some of the different types of radioactive vacuum tubes. What exactly makes them radioactive, and why? Let's talk about it. Back in the days of yore, when times were simpler, and before the transistor ruled the electronic kingdom, we used vacuum tubes.
Before time began, there was the cube.
Now, some of these vacuum tubes are radioactive. Here I have a couple of different types, but not all of them are radioactive for the same reasons. So we're going to go over a couple of these reasons today. So here I have a vacuum tube from World War II. This would have been used in a radar machine, and I believe it was in a loop of 16 similar tubes. I could be off on my number, I'm not exactly sure, but that's not why we're here today. This tube in particular is very easy to see the parts that are made of uranium glass. You can see it in most tubes. I'll put up a few examples here on the screen, but this one in particular is the best one I have for on camera. If I hold this tube over my UV light here, you can see that there are 5 different parts that are made of uranium glass. I'll get you a better shot of it, but these 5 parts are all uranium glass. The 4 small parts on top and the big piece on the bottom. Now, if you're anything like me, your question would be, now why are only parts of it uranium glass, and why not the whole thing?
I don't need sleep, I need answers.
Well, let's take a look at these. What do the 5 parts have in common? Well, if you notice, each part that has uranium glass is where metal meets glass. Interesting, isn't it?
No, not really.
It is the medium between the metal and the glass. Now, uranium glass was chosen because of its thermal expansion coefficient. It's actually very similar to the tungsten and other metals used inside of these tubes. So during hot-cold cycles, it was far less likely to crack, break, stress, and ruin the vacuum. Now, uranium glass was mostly used in high-voltage applications due to the high temperature that generally comes along with that. But it wasn't only used in high-voltage applications. Now, in some tubes, the very small amount of radiation that this tube would give off would actually help ionize the residual gas inside of the tube. Now, this had a few benefits. It made it faster on startup, it made it more efficient, but it was very minimal, and it was not the intended purpose of these tubes. It was merely a coincidental benefit. The purpose that they used it was for the seal, it wasn't for the radiation. But kind of cool that it was a benefit. Now, over the years, we got a lot better at fusing glass and metal together for tubes. So uranium glass was very slowly phased out. Now, there were vacuum tubes that used radiation to ionize the gas inside of the tube for that specific purpose. So we'll go over some of those next. Now, for a time, vacuum tubes could be found with a variety of different radioactive isotopes. Some of those being, and excuse me for having to look at my notes here, nickel-63, krypton-85, cobalt-60, cesium-137, radium-226, and thorium-232. Now, when I was doing research for this video, I did see that they kept trying to push that tritium was used in these tubes, but they were trying to say that those little tritium lights you can buy are considered vacuum tubes. Technically, yes. Okay, yes, they are a vacuum, and yes, okay, but we're going over old school electronic tubes, and those aren't electronic. Those rely purely on the radiation from the tritium, so we're not going to talk about those. However, we will go over those in a future video. Now, a lot of these isotopes were found in different forms in these tubes. Some were mixed in with the filler gas, some were applied as a coating on the inside of the glass, some were actually on the outside of the glass, applied as like a film. But here to show you, I have a tube that has radium-226 inside of the tube. Now, a general use case for these vacuum tubes with stronger sources were in cold climates. Now, the reason that is in cold climates and cold working conditions, thermonic emission can be a little difficult. So the radiation ionizes the gas, so when a high voltage is applied, it results in an almost instantaneous current. It boosted the performance of the tube, making them faster on startup. It also resulted in a more stable current. Now, if we hold this tube up to my Geiger counter here, I'm using my AlphaHound AB+G, we can see it's giving a pretty good reading of anywhere between 47 and 50,000 counts per minute. Now the cool thing with this Geiger counter is it actually separates the alpha, beta, and gamma radiation that this tube gives off, giving us a pretty good idea of what it's doing. It also has multiple modes. If I shake it, you can see that it has this sparkle effect to give you a visualization of what the radiation field looks like. It has a few other modes as well. If you'd like to get yourself an AlphaHound AB+G, use my code TOM30 at checkout for $30 off. But tubes that contained isotopes such as, we'll use krypton-85 as an example, are far less easy to detect in some cases. Not all cases. But there were small tubes that use krypton-85 that are almost impossible to detect nowadays with your standard at-home or hobbyist Geiger counters. Now you can still detect them, but it's much more difficult. Now this is for two reasons. Krypton-85 is generally a beta-emitting isotope. So a lot of its radiation is blocked by the glass that the tube is made out of. Now the glass is pretty thin on a lot of these tubes, and that doesn't stop all of it. So that's not the only reason. Now for the second reason, Krypton-85 has a half-life of 10.76 years. So this many years after they've been made, the output of radiation is far less than it would have been, upon date of manufacture. So this tube with radium-226, which has a half-life of 1600 years, and is also a pretty decent gamma emitter, unlike Krypton-85, which is mostly beta, is still very easy to detect. Very easy. I mean, you saw those numbers. And not only is it very easy to detect this many years after it was made, it's gonna be this easy to detect for a very long time. Now, I would love to have one of those tubes to show you that had an external source of radium, but those are extremely difficult to find. I've looked around online, I've looked around locally, and they're just very difficult to get. But I'm still looking, and when and if I do find one, I'll be sure to put it in a video to show you guys everything I can tell you about it. Now, another thing I wanted to show you guys was a tube that had cesium in it. Now, those aren't necessarily particularly difficult to find, I just don't have one at the moment. And if I did get one by the time I planned out this video, I wouldn't have it arrive in time. So I just had to make the video without it. But I will get one for my collection eventually, and you guys will be sure to get a feature on it. Now there's plenty of examples of radioactive isotopes in electronics, various types of tubes. There was also like fluorescent lamps that were radioactive. There was uranium and power resistors. There's the americium and smoke detectors, and many others. So we're gonna definitely do more videos on this in the future, because for this very short video, I can't even kind of touch on all of it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments. I read them all, and I'll do my very best to my knowledge to answer them. Ring the bell icon if you want to hear about my future videos, because I have quite a few planned, and I think my next one's going to be a story. So yeah, have a good one.